Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 490 for the 28th of June for the Ukraine war or the special military operation in Ukraine. And let's start off with the Southern Front. At the Southern Front, the Ukrainian forces actually reportedly landed around Zalizny port and Lazurne. So this is Zalizny port, and this is Lazurne, and the Ukrainian forces are allegedly along this area here try to did some landing. The attempt is actually to land some recon or DRG, some commandos on a small boat. However, according to unconfirmed reports, this information come from pro-Russian source Ryba. The Ukrainian forces was kind of forced out into the sea. They withdrew from the boat and get away again. Which is, if it's true, then it's quite interesting how tight the defense line is, because this is one of those places where you wouldn't expect a Ukrainian landing. Probably you expect some kind of landing around here, but they go actually this way far to land here. So this is kind of an interesting example of how tight the shores are actually being looked after by the Russian defense forces. And over at the small little salients or bridgehead at Dachi, the Ukrainian forces are still being attacked, and in this area here the fighting is still ongoing. The Russians have not blown them, have not pushed them out of this area. The Russian Defense Ministry said that they eliminated a Ukrainian attempt to land and entrench themselves in the northern part of the Antonovsky Island. I'm not sure if they're referring to this one, or maybe there's a new landing in another place. But according to Ryba, the pro-Russian source, they say that the battle is still ongoing. They say that the Ukrainians continue to hold the bridgehead over at the Antonovsky Bridge. The Russians launch strikes using heavy flamethrower systems, and however, parts of the Ukrainian forces is still remaining under the bridge. Then additional reinforcement has arrived at this location, and so far the battle is definitely still ongoing, with the Ukrainian forces continue to land forces while the Russians continue to bombard this area. I think it's quite concerning for the Ukrainian side as well, because of the arrival of the heavy flamethrower system. Heavy flamethrower system in one salvo can kill off basically the entire force that's over there. So they probably barely get away, the Ukrainian troops that is hidden under the bridge. So the battle is still ongoing over at that bridgehead, a small little battle over at Kherson Front. Moving into the Zaporizhzhia Front, at the Zaporizhzhia Front, we have fighting reported at Zerebianki. So the fighting is ongoing here. According to Ryba, citing south wind, they say that the Ukrainian forces led a force up to a company size. After losing 2 infantry fighting vehicles, they withdrew. So this one is a heavy entrenchment over at Zerebianki, so it's not going to be so easy. There's also rumors fighting over at Petikaki, the slutty town, reported by Remelin 21. They say that 128 Brigade went on the offensive, but attack failed. So Remelin is the only one that has reported this fighting over Petikaki. My original plan was about to say that Petikaki have decided to go to church and it's no longer so slutty. But so far, the fighting is still ongoing. Moving to Orikhiv, there is fighting reported north of Robotine. This is reported by Deep State UA and Ryba. And so the fighting is still ongoing for this area here. The Ukrainians are trying to take advantage of the chance, the opportunity that they have created to eventually reach the first line of defense around at Robotine. There's also fighting reported near Malatomashka. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, it looks like a very small force, since the attack, in this attack, they say that only one IFV has been destroyed. So it doesn't sound like a very big attack. So the fighting is still ongoing over at the Orikhiv sector. And on top of that, we have reports of fighting at Luhivske. Ryba, the pro-Russian source, reported that the Ukrainians sent up a DRG force, a deep reconnaissance group, up to 15 men towards Lugoskoye, which is Luhivske. And then they started fighting and contacted the Russian troops. So because Luhivske is a kind of like, is supposedly under Russian control, but we have a dispute. We have some confusion because Ryba reported reinforcement at this region here in February. So it kind of confusing. Maybe the Russian forces have some limited control over at Luhivske. The Ukrainian forces sent in DRG, and then they decided to fight each other. So anyway, the fighting reported at Luhivske is also part of the Orekhiv sector. Moving into Huaypole sector, we have recon forces or probing attacks at Mafopil. This is Mafopil, and the Ukrainian forces try to penetrate Mafopil, or probably in the area around Mafopil. So far, no success, I guess, from the Ukrainian side. And then we go to the Velyka Novosilka sector, where the Ukrainians have the most success. The Ukrainian forces over at the west of Makarivka, after they have some success here, they continue to spread out, and they managed to capture this entire area. As I mentioned before, the Russian forces, after the loss of Rivnopil, is likely to withdraw, and it looks like we are seeing this happen. And Ryba reported that the Ukrainian forces have entrenched themselves on the western part of Staromaiorske. So this is Staromaiorske, and the Ukrainian forces is now on the western part. They are entrenched around this area here, and this actually, it is kind of predictable, as I mentioned about the loss of Rivnopil. Would lead to some kind of Russian withdrawal along this river line, and yeah, I kind of caught it. So as you can see, there's a river along here. So the Russian forces falling behind the river is kind of predictable. And I believe that even this area here, this salient south of Rivnopil, is likely to be already evacuated by the Russian forces. As of now, I believe. There's a heavy fighting reported at Staromaiorske. This is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. They say that 2 enemy attacks of motorized infantry companies has been repelled at Staromaiorske. In fact, the Russian forces even use heavy flamethrower systems against the Ukrainian attack. And however, Ryba only say that this is a sabotage group. So kind of there's a disconnect. But maybe the Russian report is talking about the 27th of June, because Russian report tends to be one day late. In the sense that because their reports is at 12 noon. At Levadne, the Ukrainian forces is continuing to fight towards Priyotne. This fighting is reported by Deep State UA, Ryba, and Ryba reported that the Ukrainian forces, DRGs or recon or commandos or whatever, scouts, whatever you want to call them, of the 88th Battalion of the 35th Brigade has advanced in the direction of Priyotne, trying to hit the flanks of the Russian forces. And Deep State UA, the pro-Ukrainian source, continue to report there's some kind of fighting at Stepovo or Stepove, which is over here. However, the Russian sources always talking about Priyotne only, with the Ukrainian forces pushing in this direction. So maybe there is some fighting in this area, but it was not really being mentioned by the Russian side. So the strategic situation is looking pretty much the same. The Ukrainians are making progress, which is quite a positive for those that are supporting Ukrainians. But putting things into perspective, the first line of defense is still here, is still quite a distance away. And moving into the Donetsk Front. At the Donetsk Front, the Russians are on the offensive over at the Marinka region, with fighting reported towards Novosilka. Novosilka is over here, with the Russian forces making some progress in this area here, or maybe they're just fighting. This is reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. Over at the Marinka town or city, or no, untown or non-town, because this entire town has been flattened. The Russian forces is still conducting their attack. This is reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. Ryba reported that the most intense fighting is in the southeast, where the Russian units are trying to take some kind of a high ground over at the southeast of Marinka. So so the fighting is still ongoing over at Marinka. And moving on into the Avdiivka Front. At the Avdiivka Front, the Ukrainian forces resumed their Avdiivka offensive after a pause. The fighting is being reported at Petrovskoye, which is actually this small little village, or non-village. I don't know, this looks like a cemetery to me. Petrovskoye. And there is also fighting reported at Vesely. At the Vesely, there's some updates. The Ukrainian forces have captured. So the previous line is actually like this. The Ukrainian forces have captured the entire southern part of Vesely, this small little town here at this area here. So the Ukrainian forces have made some progress. Let me redraw this again, like this. The Russian lines here. So I believe that Vesely is likely to fall very soon with this development, and the Ukrainian forces will be able to push north, capturing this and cut over to the road. There is an entrenchment around here, so yeah, we shall see how it goes. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry continued to report that the fighting, the attack is by the Russians, not by the Ukrainians. Of course, they also never say that they are on the attack. So yeah, so this Avdiivka. And then the Ukrainian Defense Ministry in their morning report reported that there is fighting in the area of Siversk. And Siversk is weird because the front line has already been pushed forward by the Ukrainian forces, and they are more nearer to Vodian rather than Siversk. So fighting in the Siversk region, saying that the Russians are trying to push for Siversk is, yeah, not accurate at all. The Ukrainian forces is also reported to be fighting. Wrong color. To be fighting at Pervomayske. The Russian Defense Ministry said that the Ukrainians launched 5 different attacks. Oh, sorry, that's across different locations. But they attacked Pervomayske. However, Deep State UA contradicts the information, saying that the Russians are trying to achieve at least something near Pervomayske. Yeah. They're a bit weird. No, maybe they are trying to get swimming certs or something like that. No, driving license, achieve something. No, getting first in a French fries eating contest. That's all from the Avdiivka Front, and there's nothing at New York Front. Moving into the Bakhmut Front. At the Bakhmut Front, the Ukrainian Bakhmut offensive is still ongoing. The attack is being reported at Klishevka, wrong color, Klishevka towards Bakhmut, and Bakivka at near Zelizhnyansk, with the Ukrainian Defense Ministry say that the Russians are attacking Orikovo-Vasilivka, at Bodanivka, at Rozivka, and at Bilahora. So, if you believe the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, then the Russians are actually still doing something. Over at towards Bilahora, the Ukrainian forces, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry said that the Russians are pushing towards Bilahora, which is probably inaccurate. It's probably a Ukrainian offensive in this direction instead, which is what we already know the Ukrainians are doing. Over at Klishevka, fighting is still ongoing, reported by both Deep State UA and Ryba. Fighting is still ongoing. And then there's some updates in terms of Bakhmut after we have reported that in the southwest, the Ukrainian forces have captured this area here. The Ukrainian forces have reportedly get closer to the citadel. The Ukrainian forces have captured this area. The Russians previously have this line. The Ukrainian forces have actually pushed nearer and nearer towards the citadel area. This citadel area, I'm not sure if it's still a citadel, because I'm not sure if the Russians are going to use it in that way. But the Ukrainians are getting closer and closer. So let's see how this goes. And over in the northern flank, the Ukrainian forces is reportedly attacking the Bakivka. This is coming from the pro-Ukrainian source, Deep State UA. And however, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry continued to report that the Russians are conducting offensive operations. So the Russians are supposedly attacking Bodanivka. Yeah, which is probably not the case. It's probably the Ukrainians are attacking from Bodanivka. There's also fighting reported at Orekhovo-Vasilivka. Similarly, the Ukrainian forces, Ukrainian Defense Ministry are reporting the fighting as the Russian offensive, which I think is the projection. And the Surya Maps and Deep State UA, the pro-Ukrainian source, reported that the Ukrainians have partial success in taking some positions around here, which I have never mapped as Russian controlled. So the Ukrainian forces is pushing on the highway region, and the Russian forces is still holding this line near Zaliniansky. And so if we believe that the Ukrainian Defense Ministry is just projecting, then we are also seeing that the Ukrainians are pushing at Orekhovo-Vasilivka. So yeah, that's all from the Bakhmut Front. Over at the Siversk Front, so this is Siversk. At the Siversk Front in the southern part, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry said that the Russians are attacking at Rozdolivka. And there's no reported fighting over at the rest of the Siversk Front, which is unusual. Over at the Kreminna Front, in the Kreminna Front, the Ukrainian forces seems to be launching massive attacks within the Serebransky forestry. There's fighting reported near Kuzmine within the Serebransky forestry, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, and also near Hryhorivka. And I look at the Russian Defense Ministry's mapping. The fighting at Hryhorivka is likely to be within the Serebransky forestry, because even in the Russian Defense Ministry's mapping, Hryhorivka is not exactly near the Russian lines over here. So the lines are nearer on top. So the attack is likely to be, you know, within the Serebransky forestry. However, Deep State UA and Ryba both reported that the Russians are actually pressing. The Russians are actually attacking within the Serebransky forestry. So there must be some heavy trade of offensive in this area here, this entire big forest. So reinforcement is reported in the Serebransky forestry. According to Ryba, they say that the Ukrainian armed forces is transferring additional forces to the site to hold back the Russian offensive. So there is further reinforcement to the front line. So let's see how this goes. It's a lot of parallel or contradicting statements coming from different sources. And that's all from the Kreminna Front. We have nothing over at the Sviatove Front. And over at the Kupyansk Front, we have probing attacks at Timkovka. Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance group has been taken out over at this Timkovka region. The losses reportedly by the Russian Defense Ministry say that it's 30 Ukrainian servicemen with 3 motor vehicles. So this looks like a probing attack rather than a scouting or reconnaissance. It looks a bit too many people to do this thing. So there is an attack within this area here, with the Russians continue to hold the lines. So otherwise, there's nothing else over the Kupyansk Front, and there's nothing at the Kharkiv Front nor the border region. And this is the summary for the day of. Oh, sorry, this is a previous information. And this is the summary for the day of 490 for the 28th of June. And half of you have not pressed the subscribe button. Half of you, imagine you look at the views that we have per video. Let's say it's 20,000. 10,000 of you press the like button or subscribe button. 10,000 of you press the subscribe button. This channel will grow by 10,000 subs. That will be like a 33% growth. Yeah. No, you can do a lot to make this channel a big success. So press the subscribe button and please help me get there. And I'll see you in the next update.